name is David Duong. I immigrated from Vietnam with my parents in 1990, and I was about 4 years old at the time. Growing up in a place where I was different, I really felt ashamed of my skin color. I felt ashamed of my background and my heritage, and I wanted to erase all of that. My father was a captain in the Republic of South Vietnam's military. When my parents talked about Vietnam, they also talked about the war and the difficult times after the war, and that's what I associated Vietnam with. It gave me a very negative view of this country.
But time after time, something has changed.
And then soon, I was able to find a place for Vietnam in my future and find a place for me in Vietnam's future.
Hello and welcome to our Talk Vietnam. What is your name? Where do you come from? And why are you in here? These universal questions have followed our featured guest today from the first grade classroom in Michigan of the United States to different parts of the world like Haiti, Uganda, and finally Vietnam. As he's been trying to answer those questions in different settings, he's experiencing his journey to find his roots, one that is emotionally incredible and intellectually fulfilling. And he is Dr. David Dương Bảo Long. And we are very happy to have him here today. Hi, David. Thank you for joining our program today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's very hot.
So the first questions, why are those three questions? What do they mean to you?
Yeah, those are three really good questions. I've been asking that for a long time. I think that they're questions that are universal to all of us, right? As in terms of where we come from, why we do what we do, and really why we get up in the morning and what we hope to get out of life. And to me, it's been a journey, and I'm still on that journey to find the answers to those questions. I just take something as simple as what is my name, and I was born as Dương Bảo Long in Đà Lạt. And I moved to the United States when I was 4, and the name David was added on. And then my life flipped kind of upside down. Just as in Vietnam, my last name came first. Mm-hmm. In the United States, not only did I get a new name, but then my first name came first and my last name was last. So that, to me, kind of parallels how my world flipped from the way that my name was flipped to the way that I was flipped. You know, I was so ashamed of the Vietnamese part of my name for most of my childhood and young adult life, and really kept away the Bảo Long and even changed the way that we pronounce Dương to Duong. But as I've gotten older and as I have experienced my heritage more and come to love that part, reintroducing the Bảo Long into my name and reintroducing myself as Dương instead of Duong in certain contexts, that's just a part of the journey. So I think that we all struggle and we all go on that journey, but for me, it's been very connected to Vietnam and who I am and where I come from.
Why were you ashamed of your name, Long? And is there any reason behind that?
I think it was very difficult for Americans to pronounce. They didn't pronounce it as Long, they pronounced it as Long. And I grew up in a very small town in Michigan where we were really the only Asian people around, much less Vietnamese, but really Asian. And just by the mere fact of my skin color and my hair color, I stood out, and I wanted to do everything I could to prevent myself from sticking out. So forgetting the name Long and putting myself as David was one less identity that I had to deal with in terms of not standing out.
After coming to the US in 1990, David Zung's family settled in Jacksonville in Florida, then moved to Holland in Michigan for better job opportunities. At the time, they were the only Asian family for miles around and felt quite marginalized because of it.
Tên này long có nghĩa là dài. Cho nên cái tên của David á, khi mà David lên trường học là bị các bạn dịu lắm. Anh bị David gần quá, về tự đổi tên. Lên nói với cô giáo đổi tên, về nói với cha mẹ đổi tên. Khi mà lên trung học đó, tôi họp hành á, thì tôi cũng không nói nhiều được. Trong những cái vấn đề sinh hoạt ở trường đó, thì tôi cũng không có tham dự nhiều và cũng không có sinh hoạt được giống như các bà mẹ khác, như những cha mẹ của bên này. Cho nên vì khác biệt đó, cho nên David thấy là ở sao mình không được là người như ở bên này. Hồi còn nhỏ thì những cái đó làm cho David xấu hổ.
During the 3 years on welfare, David's parents worked hard in a meat packing plant and an assembly line jarring pickles for Heinz. On the weekends, he would walk the streets with his parents, a large poking stick in one hand and a large plastic bag in the other, gathering aluminum cans from the sidewalks. They would save them and once a month return them for 10 cents each.
Because your father worked third shift and your mom also busy working, and you mentioned about communicating with them by putting chocolate and letter in the fridge.
When I grew up in Vietnam, I remember seeing my mom all the time, seeing my dad all the time, seeing my aunts and uncles and cousins, these people that I loved, right? And when we moved to Florida, my very first memory was that my mom and dad were never around because they would go to work during the day and like cleaning toilets or picking up garbage or whatever. And then at night they would have to go to school. So by the time they get home, it would be very late and I would be asleep. And by the time I got up in the morning, they were already at work. And that was the biggest difference for me because I used to be with my parents all the time when I was in Vietnam. So how we communicated was that my mom knew that I loved these Mr. Good bars, which are these small pieces of chocolate wrapped in this yellow wrapper that had some peanuts in it. And she would tell me that she would love me because we couldn't see each other, that she would hide it in the back of the freezer. And that's how I knew that she was thinking about me. And up until now, whenever I see a Mr. Good bar and I put it in the fridge, I think about that memory and I think about the fact that my parents worked so hard and we couldn't see each other all the time, but that piece of chocolate was really special.
Yeah. And your father, how did he communicate with you?
My father and I communicated through report cards. So I would bring home a report card with all A's or all excellent, and then I would hang it on the fridge, and then he would come home much later than me, and then what he would do is he would write, "Good job, son." And that was it.
Yeah. And have you ever thought that you wish, you have parents that were not that busy and that,
Of course, I think that, as a kid, you just want to have your parents around all the time. And it wasn't until later so I went through this period where I think, I accepted it and I worked really hard for good grades so that I could show that to my dad to make him proud. And then in high school, I just started resenting him. I was just so upset that he was never around and he was always working and he valued work over me. And then as I got older, I realized what a big sacrifice it was for him to do that.
Yeah. Besides your family, you also spent a lot of time at school and making new friends. So how was that experience?
The experience was, I think, initially difficult. There was this Asian kid at school, and people looked at me funny, and they didn't understand certain things about why I did the things I did. I remember one of my in Vietnam when we went to school, we would wear collared shirts, right?
Yeah.
And white shirts, and And when we went to the United States, my mom, every single morning for the first, month, ironed my white shirts from Vietnam, and I was, 5 or 6 at the time, and I would wear it. And the kids would really make fun of me because they said, why don't you wear t-shirts and jeans like we do, but why do you dress so formal? Why do you wear dress pants and collared shirts? And that made me feel different, and it was difficult.
You kind of ashamed of your family picking you up at school
Yeah.
or dropping you up. Can you share more about that?
Yeah. When my parents would pick me up at school, I would say, meet me 2 blocks away, because maybe, just maybe my friends or these kids would assume that I was adopted or something because they didn't see my parents. Or I was afraid that my parents, if they got too close to the school, that other parents would talk to them. And my parents, although they speak English, there's a very heavy accent to it because English is not their first language. And I was ashamed of their accent and of the way they spoke English. And my parents at that time represented Vietnam to me, right? They represented the old traditions. They represented this country that was really a war. They represented everything that Vietnam was, and because I rejected all of that, that was when I started saying, you know what, I'm not going to align myself with them, meaning I'm going to start slowly separating myself. Yeah.
The only way David could forget about his roots was to do really well in school. He tried hard to rise to the top of his class and have the highest scores in every course he attended. He wanted to have another identity for himself other than being a Vietnamese American. He wanted to be the smartest kid.
I graduated from high school and I really told myself, I'm going to be an American. I'm going to forget about Vietnam, and I don't want anything to do with that.
David succeeded academically his entire life. After earning a Master of Public Health from the University of Michigan, he went on to attend Harvard Medical School, where he was also a Fulbright scholar. David is currently the director of the Global Primary Care and Social Change Program at the Harvard Medical School, and also a doctor at the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts.
Did you ever imagine that one day, someday, you would go back to Vietnam?
I didn't want to. At that time, I didn't want to. At that time, I, was in high school, and all of my friends were going to summer camp. They were going to Disney, they were going to Florida, California, New York, Europe. And my parents really wanted to take us back to Vietnam, and I really didn't want to go. So at that time, I didn't imagine going back to Vietnam.
But why didn't you want to go?
I didn't want to go because, again, that was the period in time when I was really rejecting everything about Vietnam. So I came back, we, stayed with family members. We were just
So you went back to Dalat?
Yeah, we went back to Dalat, and I just didn't have fun because everything was so dirty and people were speaking so fast, or people were speaking in a language that I really didn't understand, and there was a lot of foods that I didn't like, that I've never tried before, and I just wanted to be away from it as much as possible.
So, and then why did you went back to Vietnam later, the second time?
Yeah. So then I went to the University of Michigan in college, and I, for the first time, saw other people, or people that looked like me. So other Asians, but also this whole diversity of African American and Latino. And it was then that I started to realize that it was okay not to be white. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That it was okay to be different, and it was okay not to conform to white America. And then I started being curious about who I was and where I came from. And that first year when I took anthropology, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's so many different cultures out there, and each of them has their own value. Well, what about my culture? What is my real culture? And that started me asking questions. And then that's why I decided to come back by myself.
Can you
with
tell
friends.
us more about this time when you came back to
Yeah, so I had a group of friends who lived with me in my dormitory at the University of Michigan at Alice Lloyd Hall. And one kid, his father was a Vietnamese veteran, so his father fought in the war, and who's American and came back. Another kid just was very interested in Asia and has never left Michigan before and just wanted to explore the world. And then my best friend just wanted to come along for an adventure, and we said, okay, let's just buy a ticket to Vietnam, and we did that. And I remember my parents came up to visit me, and I was so afraid of telling them. So I bought the ticket, and then I said, oh, so for the first month in the summer break, I'm going to Vietnam, and I already bought my ticket, and you can't stop me. And they were like, oh my gosh, what do you mean? Oh, you know, and my dad started getting very worried, and he's like, well, you don't speak the language that well, and how are you going to survive, and what if people kidnap you, and you know, and started spiraling down. And then, so we all got on the plane and we landed in Hanoi, and I remember the first morning waking up in the old quarter and just seeing the hustle and bustle and the activity of the old quarter. I looked at Vietnam through a different lens that trip back, and we went from Hanoi to Hạ Long Bay to Sapa, down to Hue, Hoi An, and we went to Dalat, Nha Trang, and to Ho Chi Minh City. And instead of being dusty or dirty, or the food being too spicy or too salty or it being too hot, I just remember for the first time talking to people, like here, talking to the taxi driver, talking to the bus driver.
How was your Vietnamese?
It was bad. It was bad at the time, but you know, I could struggle. And I think what I really appreciated was that they realized that I was trying, like the taxi drivers or the woman who row your boat at Hương Pagoda, you know, like she saw that I was trying, and she reciprocated that, and that was really nice. I remember for the first time riding on the back of a motorbike of a xe ôm driver through the streets of Ho Chi Minh City and just feeling that adrenaline rush, and then a rainstorm coming down and just not even minding it was raining because I just felt so alive, and that something in me, you know, opened up. Yeah. And that's what I felt for the first time, that I was in Vietnam.
While studying international healthcare at the University of Michigan, David Dương formed an NGO named Crossing Borders and took a team of Americans and Vietnamese Americans to volunteer at a health center in Điêu Lương commune of Phú Thọ province. 3 summers from 2005 to 2007 was dedicated to compiling a complete report of the local nutrition condition and understanding the Vietnamese culture and lifestyle.
Here in Vietnam because I want to live like the people of Vietnam. I want to be able to help them, but in order for me to first help the people of Vietnam, I need to understand their life. It's so easy for me to sit in the classroom and think that I know what they go through, and because I have seen it or I've read it or I've been told it, but to experience it is a totally different thing.
Thanks to his program, David affirmed his determination to pursue the career as a doctor and returned to help Vietnam, his homeland. Today, David is heading to where it all started 14 years ago.
Chào anh chị. Anh khỏe chứ? Chào anh khỏe, anh khỏe, em khỏe, anh khỏe. Dạ, anh khỏe tốt hết ạ. Dạ tốt ạ. Dạ tốt ạ. Gia đình của anh khỏe chứ? Chị Lý khỏe?
Chung là cả gia đình cũng khỏe.
Dạ. Đúng, tốt quá rồi.
Công việc là tốt không nào?
Dạ, công việc tốt ạ. Bây giờ cho em đang làm bác sĩ nội trú ở bên kia ạ. Cái trạm mới xây ạ anh.
Mr. Điêu Quốc Trị, head of the center, takes David around the new facility, which was partly rebuilt from the old center.
Phần sảnh của trạm nó được trang bị theo cái mẫu mới.
Here the whole team used to take turns to assist the clinic staff to take care of patients, including delivering
Cái
babies.
phòng này là hồi xưa là
Đây là phòng này hồi xưa vẫn nằm đây đấy.
Dạ.
Đây, đến đây thì nằm đây.
Dạ.
Đây phòng nữa đẻ đây.
Đây cũng nhớ cái phòng này ạ.
Thế thì từ năm đấy bây giờ các cháu lớn lắm.
Trời ơi, rồi có 10 năm rồi ạ. Tốt.
Là hay bị cạn
Mr. Chi was the closest one to David for the whole period of 6 months here. He often calls him by his Vietnamese name Long.
Tôi thấy là rất hay, rất quý ở Long ở chỗ là như vậy là sống rất là tình cảm. Giao tiếp đối với người bệnh là như vậy, anh ấy hỏi han cẩn thận lắm, chi tiết lắm. Thế sau đó thì như vậy là đến cái chăm sóc mà bà mẹ rồi thì chăm sóc trẻ là anh cũng rất quan tâm. Có nhiều hôm là phải thức ở đêm.
Just walking through the old halls and sitting on the bed that I used to sleep on and going to the room where we were delivering babies and stuff and looking at that beautiful view out there with the rice paddies. It really reminds me of how beautiful this country is and how connected I am to it. Nhìn lớn thế, cao gần vài năm rồi. Chị, chào chị khỏe chứ?
Khỏe chứ?
Dạ, em khỏe ạ. Chị vẫn nhìn như thế thôi ạ.
David is now like part of Mr. Chi's family. For 2 consecutive summers, he and his friends were taken care of at his house. Miss Lê Thị Lý still remembers vividly the bond among her family members and the crossing borders students, especially David.
Germany đây nè.
Long đã sống ở bên Mỹ đã lâu từ nhỏ rồi nên sẽ khó hòa nhập mới sống ở theo phong tục của Việt Nam mình, nên về đây thì có nhiều lúc Long vẫn còn bỡ ngỡ, nhưng xong Long lại rất chịu khó học hỏi, tìm nói mọi người để mình còn biết theo cái phong tục của Việt Nam mình, kể cả như là việc đi chợ này, hay là nhặt rau hay nấu cơm, hay là những việc giặt quần áo. Đấy, những việc đấy là Long đều tự hỏi để biết, để làm những việc rất là nhỏ trong những cái việc hàng ngày. Các bạn trước khi ra về bạn nào cũng khóc lóc cùng với gia đình, chỉ muốn là ở lại, không muốn về bên Mỹ nữa.
Hấp dẫn quá.
Lấy miếng đi.
Ngon đó. Được rồi chị ơi.
Such experience like this has not only melted away the preconceived notions that young Vietnamese Americans like David might have had before, but also given them a place to call home.
So what skills did you learn?
Oh wow, what
during
skills?
that time living
I learned
in
how to
there?
chop wood. I learned how to light a fire. I learned how to boil rice at an open fire. I learned how to plant rice. So we came in May and we left in August. And I learned that there was so many different terms for rice, from young rice to mature rice to rice that was ready for harvest, right? And I learned the term bán lưng cho trời, bán mặt cho đất at that point in time. So we really tried to integrate ourselves into the life of the commune. And we really tried to integrate where the commune even gave us a little plot of land, probably the size of this room right here. And we would, you know, hunch over and take the ma and take the rice seedlings.
Can you demonstrate?
And we would plant the rice, right? And then the rice would float back up and float away.
Yeah.
And then all of the, you know, the other ladies and the men would laugh at us. So then, you know, they would show us how to plant, and we planted in neat rows, and you know, and we would đi cày beforehand. So like, take the water buffalo and try to plow the land. And I learned about opening up the dike systems so that, because you can only, the villagers had to take turns to open up the dike system from the Red River to come in to flood the land. So that was just, it was amazing that like we were so connected with the people and how they lived their life and how difficult it was. But yet everyone was very, this communal aspect to it. And I think thinking back on it now, it brought me back to a time when I lived in Vietnam where I was living with my aunts and my uncles and my cousins, and we were all one big family. And that's what the commune meant for me, or that's what it felt like for me. Like I would walk down the dirt road and I would see this neighbor or that neighbor and I'd stop in for tea and talk or this or that, you know? And the doctor of the commune health center said a very important quote to me that I carry with me to this day. And he said, you know, Vietnam không có giàu về vật chất, so Vietnam is not very rich in material goods, but Vietnam rất giàu vào tình cảm. Vietnam is very rich in compassion and love. And that has really carried me through. So we lived at the Commune Health Center, so we saw the different activities from the childbirthing to the vaccinations, to teaching on malnutrition, to bandaging and trying to take care of wounds, to diagnosing colds or coughs or stuff like that, giving medicines. And I just saw what a difficult job these doctors had and difficult job these nurses had. That I remember my first time delivering a baby was in Diu Lương. And this was the day, unfortunately, that there was no electricity because it was at the other commune, right? And at 9:30, I'm sitting in the phòng tiếp khách, so the living room of the Commune Health Center where patients come in first. And this lady that I've actually known for the summer comes in and she's like, I'm ready. And I'm like, oh, this isn't a good time. There's no electricity. And she's like, but I'm really ready. So I go and I call the wife of the doctor, who is a midwife. And, her and I, squatting on the floor by candlelight, trying to sterilize equipment, trying to get a flashlight so that we could deliver this child. And we delivered, and the child came safely into the world. But it was by candlelight and by flashlight. Right? Yeah. And we wrapped it up.
You could never experience that in the U.S.
No, you could never experience that in many places, but especially in the U.S. And I just saw the commitment of the doctors and the health staff there taking care of the villagers and making sure that they were safe and that they were healthy. And that's what started me thinking about what do I need to do?
So David, is that your love for Vietnam, do you think, is that empathy or love?
I think it's tình cảm. Which I think it's, I don't know what the translation to Vietnamese into English is, but I think it's a mixture of love. There's some empathy in there, but it's really this feeling that you want it to be better, right? And you want them to be the best that they can be, and you want all the best things for them.
For 5 years, Dr. David has been traveling extensively to dozens of commune health centers across Vietnam and providing training support for doctors and health practitioners at commune level. The program centers around training prospective physicians and health professionals to consider each patient's circumstance and access to health care.
Bác sĩ David chia sẻ một số cái ví dụ về dịch tễ, ví dụ về những cái triệu chứng ca lâm sàng và những cái phác đồ điều trị tăng huyết áp, thì tôi thấy là rất là hữu ích cho cái tuyến cơ sở của tụi tôi.
Bác sĩ Dương là một bác sĩ trẻ, là Việt kiều, rất là yêu nước, rất là yêu nhân dân của mình, là từ nước ngoài trở về Việt Nam để chăm sóc sức khỏe cho nhân dân của mình.
David is also leading a $14 million partnership between the public and private sector to reform healthcare education in Vietnam. The program starts from introducing new curriculum for 5 medical schools throughout the country.
David Dương đã đóng góp vào cùng với nhà trường cùng viết một cái dự án về đổi mới chương trình. Và phải nói rằng David Dương là một cậu thanh niên hết sức là nhiệt huyết, hết sức nhiệt tâm và hết sức có năng lực, và đồng thời cũng hết sức là có cái tâm vì cái cộng đồng. Tôi không ngờ là bạn ấy trẻ mà bạn ấy lại làm việc, cái sức làm việc phải nói là rất là mạnh.
Under David's direction, the program in Global Primary Care and Social Change of Harvard Medical School is working with the Ministry of Health to build a strong and robust primary care system through research and innovative care delivery models to deliver the best care to the people of Vietnam to achieve the goal of universal health coverage by 2030. In the role of Associate Director for Partnerships and Health Systems, David implements strategy for government, public, private, and multilateral partnership development and engagement, and oversee HIVN's programming to strengthen the human resources for health.
IBM provide a very effective support to improve the quality of medical education and healthcare professional education in Vietnam. The second one is to provide more opportunity for the practicum, the clinical training to the young doctors, health practitioners. All of this is a part of big medical education reform, IBM and also WHO supporting MOH, and we believe that will be the key for success of UHC reform in Vietnam.
David hopes with good primary health care, 80 to 90% of health problems of Vietnamese people can be solved at the primary health care level.
My vision and my dream is really to support those primary healthcare facilities, specifically at the commune level, to increase their capacity and quality. And because of that, I've taken that passion with me through my entire adult life to bring projects and investments to Vietnam that can achieve and realize that goal.
Starting from a small wish to help people like anh chị or chị Lý to have better working condition in commune health centers. Now your project is getting bigger. So looking back, what has been the most fulfilling part?
For me, the most fulfilling part about this journey has been the relationships. I think that the relationships that I've developed with colleagues in Vietnam, with the Ministry of Health and colleagues at the Ministry of Health, with colleagues at the medical universities, and to see me grow, but also to see them grow and see this collaboration grow. And it grows because we're all working towards the same vision. And it grows because we all believe in it. And we believe in it because we trust each other. And we trust each other because we have that strong relationship with each other. And I think that's what drives it, right? The other part that has been most satisfying for me is I think that my love for Vietnam, every moment just grows. And I just really have come to really love this country and really want the best for it.
And do you think Vietnam now, it's a country with young population, like you said, with many opportunities. So with your advantages, with your inner strength, do you think that it's also a good decision, a good choice for you to work here and to devote to enhance the health system here?
With the current situation of Vietnam, where the government is very open to wanting to integrate with the rest of the world, where the government is seeing Vietnam as a position of leadership in the world. You know, we hosted the Trump-Kim summit. We are now in the UN Security Council again, that the government really wants to integrate internationally. And this is a time then for me as my position here to help Vietnam do that. And the government is creating avenues and openings for me to be able to have an impact and for my voice to be able to be heard. And I think that that is a very big professional opportunity that that's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
So do you think, are there other people like you, also second generation Vietnamese American, also wanting to go to Vietnam and contribute to Vietnam and also seek more opportunities, with all of the skills that you have, your background, your experience in the US, you can contribute a lot to Vietnam.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of second generation Vietnamese, Americans, French, German, Australian that want to come back, I think. Every week I get emails from Vietnamese American students at different universities in the US, at Harvard, who say, Dr. David, I really want to come back and explore and learn more. Can you create opportunities for me? And I think it's my job now where I am at to help them do that, to connect them with people, to connect them with organizations. I think the desire is there. And you say it's because the second generation Vietnamese Americans or overseas Vietnamese, because we were educated abroad and we can contribute back to Vietnam. That's one part of it. But I think that Vietnam also gives us a sense of belonging and a sense of home. And that's really powerful.
did your parents react on your more and more engagement with activities in Vietnam?
I think they were very confused. I think with older Vietnamese people who have left Vietnam, they have a very specific image of Vietnam that it's hard for them to get rid of. Their image of them is April 30th, 1975, when everything was going kind of crazy, right? Or their image is immediately after and how difficult it was. And because it was so difficult, it sticks with them in their mind so much, and that's the image they have of Vietnam. So, you know, the question for that generation is, I work so hard to get out of it, to give you, you know, to get you out of it. Why do you want to go back to that situation? And I think for them, it's very difficult for them of that generation to understand that it's not that anymore, and it's very different.
Do you think people of your generation kind of change their mindset and their thinking about Vietnam?
I think we have the potential to change their mindset. I think that people of my generation, it's our responsibility to recognize the fact that we are Vietnamese. We may be Vietnamese French, Vietnamese Australian, Vietnamese American, but we are Vietnamese, and that we need to be ambassadors, and we need to be that bridge to reconnect again and say that, you know, when you and I talk, it's fine, you know, and we understand each other, right? And that's what we need moving forward. There needs to be some reconciliation, and we can be the kind of the bridge to do that.
So David, what's your purpose in life? What's the motivations behind all of your activities and contributions here in Vietnam?
My time in Vietnam has taught me, or has reminded me, who I am and where I come from, and that I have this rich history of ancestors and of people behind me who have gotten me to this place. And now the question becomes, what am I doing to contribute to that, right? What am I doing to make this place great? What am I doing to make it better? I think back to, you know, in Dalat now, we still have an altar to my mother's family and my father's family. And there's still all the pictures up of my grandparents, my great-grandparents, aunts and uncles. And whenever I light incense to them, I'm reminded that I'm here because of them, right? And I'm here because of the small sacrifices or the small works or their life that has gotten me here. And I'm reminded of all my ancestors, right? And I really, I think, have to say thank you to Vietnam for allowing me to realize that we don't live in these, like, we are not where we are because of just us, but we're where we are because of society, because of family, because of culture. So then the question for me becomes, how do I contribute to that bigger picture? Right? So that in 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, someone else is sitting here and being like, I'm where I am because of all these little things, because of all these little people. And Vietnam's taught me that you're not alone in your accomplishments, but you stand on the shoulder of giants, right? And these giants are people around you and your ancestors.
So now have you found the answers for the first 3 questions?
I don't know if I'll ever find answers to those questions. I think that it's a journey. I think that right now I'm finally able to answer that my name is David, and very proudly about Long and then Dương, right? Where I come from, I think I'm very proud to say that I come from a very rich and diverse history, and I come from a very rich and culturally vibrant land that has gone through generations and millennia of war and peace and war and peace, and now is finally at peace, but that it's also woven with, you know, the American spirit and the American dream and the American work ethic and mindset, and that the answer of where I come from is complicated, right? It's not so easy anymore. And what am I doing here? I think that will be a constant question in my life. But I think that at this stage, what am I doing here is really looking at how to allow Vietnam to continue to grow economically, grow socially through healthcare and a really strong healthcare system.
And that's your Vietnamese dream.
Yeah, and one could say that's my Vietnamese dream. Yeah.
Thank you so much, David, for sharing your stories with us. We were so moved and we learned so much from your journey and your personal story. And I hope that our audience also feel the same. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time.
Việt Nam tôi
Chào anh. Chị.
bao la
Chào anh bạn.
chim muông cánh cỏ quy về một nơi. Việt Nam tôi yêu thương ngàn đời, du a du hời con nhỏ nằm nôi. Việt Nam ơi, ơi đất mẹ ơi, đi xa năm tháng lòng hoa chẳng nguôi. Việt Nam ơi, Việt Nam quê cha dân tộc mắt nâu xa vàng.